radio station.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So she asked for her birthday for the last one through. We did take it together. I said, well, awesome.
Good for her. She a big fan?
Yeah. I guess she's been there, and I thought she was. I've seen him. I saw him on the original Battle of Home. That was awesome.
25 years ago.
Yeah. Here, go meet Jeremy. 30 years.
30, yeah.
That column. This is Christian.
I would like you to, a lot better than the guitar players there. Yeah, the head.
Honestly, it's like the only thing that we really have to get out is the discussion, right?
What I did was we contemplated the demo. I added a button on the looking for it. You know how to get to that. We still have
it's in the normal.
It was like this whole song before that.
But we just made a new folder in there.
Any additional folks sign on? Looks like maybe Wesley and Fitz, is that right?
Yeah.
Rudy.
Yeah.
The camera needs to go up and to the right just a little bit, I think. Are we supposed to be able to look at that screen?
No, you're going to see the screen on the screen. You should have the projector on, right?
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. You don't have to see the camera if you don't want to, but just like we do on our Monday meetings, you can make the camera view small so you're seeing the screen as large as possible. That makes sense?
Good luck with that.
Tomorrow.
Let me get that thing.
Yeah. You put it here offer.
Yeah.
It's got Darius Guy's signature on it.
Do what?
Okay. Football now. When you guys start doing all the time, run me.
Whatever you need. They do it again.
Wherever it is. Like the
Open it and just go more as long as I'm putting that.
open it, man, it's supposed to be 400.
Yeah, you gotta do a silent auction.
Just give us a few more minutes. It's just last minute setup, and then we'll get started. All right, so we're going to get started. Hang on here. We've got a little bit before we start with that. Are you welcome to get some lunch? So can everyone on the phone, I guess, say something if you can't hear us or see us? We set this session up really to mainly talk about the recent communication around Fee Curve on the new server, and wanted to cover some changes and updates to the Fee Curve app itself that Jeremy's going to cover, Jeremy Ducote, and then also we have a bug tracker that we're going to deploy that really is going to be in place to help identify potential issues with code or other things in the app so that we can address them a little more timely. We know exactly what it is that really caused the issue. And then Jason's going to take us through kind of the TLC process, when cost projections are due. Also talk about some things that he's going to share as tips for our users. Hopefully we have a lot of PMs on the call that are doing cost projections. We are recording this session, both the screen and the audio, so we will have that we can share around for future use. I guess before we get started, to cover a little safety moment, we talk about safety a lot, and really this is somewhat not related to construction safety, but especially with everything going on with the hurricanes, both Irma and Harvey. I ask all of us, keep those folks in your thoughts and prayers. I know many of us in the company were affected by the flooding last year in some way, and it is a very difficult time. So if you can kind of just keep all those folks in your thoughts and prayers. We as an organization will be contributing some funds probably in the early next week. I'll send something out about that. If you can afford to help folks, whether it's monetary donations or other donations, volunteering, certainly we would appreciate you doing that. And then with 9/11 on Monday, I know the attacks on 9/11 certainly changed our country in many ways, and obviously we're still dealing with the aftermath of those events. So I think there was in excess of 2,900 people that were killed on 9/11 in 2001. So I know many folks are still grieving over that, and if you can keep those people in your thoughts and prayers, would be great. So with that, I guess we'll hand it to Jeremy to kick us off.
All right, so really the biggest thing that we've done was take Fee Curve and move it over to a more powerful server to help with the processing speed. I know there have been errors here and there, reports running slow, timeout errors, and things like that. So that has been published out and it's live. I'm not sure if any of you have had a chance to go and run Fee Curve recently and have seen any performance difference. It seems that a few people who have came back to us have said that there is definitely a performance increase on the reporting side and in just the flow of the application as well. So I'm going to go through some of the documentation on Fee Curve. The first one that I'll show you is, you may have already seen this one. This is just a reminder for whenever you are training, if you're doing a projection for the first time, you need a refresher. This document here is located in OCS 510. It does have all the basics that you need to know to do a projection. Mark your stuff. I think you forgotten something.
Like moving his mouse and it wasn't moving.
Yeah. Are we supposed to be seeing the document screen?
Yeah, you should be seeing the Fee Curve document.
We're seeing some kind of cash refresh plan.
All right, let's switch the screen here.
Manual?
That's it.
Okay.
Got it?
7 pages.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, sorry about that. So take a moment and go through OCF 510, open up this training document and just go through, like I said, it goes through the entire process for fee curve, and that should get you started. There's also another document in OCF 510. Oh, let's get back out there. We're still following me on the screen, with me on the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So 510 OCS. It says Excel PCSR. This should be moved. But here it is, Fee Curve TLC 2.1 instructions. That was dated March 2015. That's still a good copy for you to refer to. And then here in the folder above it is Fee Curve 2.1 Sage Update. And that's all I'll go through right now to explain some feature changes. We made these feature changes back in January. And with these changes, we started noticing that we may need to move to a new server. So taking all your feedback to date for functionality on Fee Curve, we've added these, saw that it needs some more processing power, a better engine, and so we moved it over so that these can flow through nicely. Okay. So this is your projection entry screen. The big thing that we added here was when you would drill down into your phase code, it would only give you your AP transactions. And we had users that needed to see all the transactions, such as your payroll costs or commitments and things like that. So when you're in this screen and you click show cost detail, and it should be shown by default, you'll notice there's two tabs there, one for AP transactions and one phase detail. You just want to make sure that you do have a phase code highlighted. If you don't have a phase code highlighted above it, it won't know which code to give you the report on down below. Okay. So the next thing are extras. I know everyone probably uses extras a little differently, and recently, I believe last year, there was a project that required projections to be done at the extra level. So if you have one of those projects, when you set up your new projection, there's a checkbox in between project, right underneath select project. When you select that checkbox, a new window will open, a drop down will open below for you to select the extra or phase that you want to project on. When you do this, it will only open a projection for that extra. So just make sure that is what you want to do. And then you just go through with the regular process, pick your cutoff date, and build the projection worksheet. One of the last things we had here, I don't believe I have it in these notes, but just so you know, no one at Lemoyne likes to wait. And when it was building the projection worksheet, some of you would click, and I do the same thing with applications. But we put a better progress bar there, and it disabled that button. So click away. It shouldn't break it. Any questions so far about, and especially the folks calling in, about the extra section, or anyone who had any trouble with it or tried to use it, or any feedback at all? No. Okay. Well, just send us an email. I'm sure there'll be something down the road with it. Okay. So continuing with extras, when you're going to open an existing projection, you'll notice there's another checkbox that says Show Phase Contract View. What that will do is it'll switch your view to show all the individual extras that are on your project. If you uncheck it, you can still go and look at the entire project. So if you're I know projections should still be done at the main project level, so if you need to do one final check and see everything there, you would uncheck Show Phase Contract View, double-click to open your projection. That's your normal view, and you will still see all the extras. If you check this, you can double-click into an individual extra. It'll load up your projection window just for that extra. And these gray notes below explain everything. So one feature of this is a side panel. When we first rolled Fee Curve out, we really didn't think people would look at it much, but everyone really heavily relies on it. So, and this one can be a bit confusing. When you're opening it up without the extras, it's going to default to the contract tab. And it does the same thing whenever you open it up for just the extra. So just know that when you open it up for the extra, you want to click the extra tab to see the side panel numbers just for that extra. And
Jeremy,
yeah.
the regular side panel that you were just showing, all those values, that includes any extras that you would have, right? That's a total?
Yes.
Okay.
On the contract tab, it is the full project.
Okay.
With all
extras. All right, thanks.
Right. Yeah. What the extra tab does not do is summarize all extras. It will only show one extra at a time. Any other questions? And feel free to send a question in the chat window.
Something to think about, Jeremy. We might need to develop something that shows us what your base project only is without having to do a mathematical calculation to back the extra out. You parking lot that.
In the side panel, yeah.
Okay. Sure, we can have an item in the report that shows total extras with the option to expand it and see a summary for each individual extra in the same window. That would be a good feature to have. Now, with that comment, would you also want to see the extra breakdown with the categories, or is just the total project enough?
Extra.
Yeah, you might as well, if you're going to do it, let's do the categories too.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions about the phase detail back here?
Yeah, Jeremy, this is Greg Ellison, Lafayette office. I noticed on some of my projections, say you're doing something for, it's in August projection, some of the phase detail costs would show up from some September costs when you break it out. I've noticed that even when I sync it, say for August 31st.
Yeah, the phase detail does show all the costs to date down below.
Right, but the columns and all the cost above are only showing through August 31st.
Right.
Correct.
And we did that because there were some users who had a need to see all the costs.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So that was by intent. Okay.
Right. So I'm glad we're backing up here because I forget to mention, for those of you who are using the equipment cost module, equipment cost is now in both sections, the phase detail and the cost code summary. And that was a cost type that wasn't used before and is there now. Let us know if you have a job that has equipment costs from the equipment module and you don't see it in there, and we'll investigate it. But it should all be pulling through.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yes.
Can you hear me? This is Michael Galasta. Is does it still function where if you don't have any dollars in a labor budget line item, but you have job costs to date, or you have job costs that hit the job, but no budget item, if you don't go and put cost to complete, like if you don't put like $1, or it won't calculate that in the final cost. It'll leave it at 0.
Yeah. That's true because it needs that variable. Yeah, it needs to know, without a budget, it really has nowhere else to go. So it needs to know that there is something in cost to complete. But that's something that was on the table a while back, and it's something we can look at again to see if we can write a smarter formula for it.
Yeah, it only does it in labor, and it happens quite frequently where you end up with labor hitting a job that was never in a budget, and you don't really want to move money into it because you want to reflect the fact that it was missed. So, in my opinion, it needs to be addressed. It creates a lot of potential for someone to miss something and not put a cost to complete, and that job, it can mess your projection up really easily.
Right. You can also, if it is a mistake like that, you can just say that cost code is complete. If you check the completion box, it will still calculate.
You're right. It can. I think just a lot of time people are maybe hesitant, or at least I'm hesitant to close out a line item saying it's finished. Just the chance that you may have costs that hit it later, even though you may not anticipate it. You're right. That is a way to navigate around it, but I think it's just a conversation that maybe needs to be had again. That something could be addressed to fix that. In my opinion, it should be done.
Okay.
But,
right.
Jeremy, to Michael's point, we're trying to company-wide looking at cost codes and seeing, we don't want to reallocate and move money around. So I think I've run across that as well. If you have that in multiple locations, it leaves everybody open to mistakes. And in the last spreadsheets we had in the old Excel sheet, it allowed for that. So I definitely think it's important. I just wanted to second that.
Okay. Just take a couple more minutes here. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda.
What was the major point on that, so we should make sure? Yeah, if you have labor hitting a job and you don't have a budget for it, I'm just recapping, you gotta put $1 in there so the formula will work. If not, it'll think that it'll override it and it'll show 0. Yeah. Or you can go in and click the cost code is closed, but it might not be because you got another 10 weeks work. So we should make sure we try to address that. It's probably a formula.
The reason why, I'll just tell you the reason why is the push to input production units, right? That is a huge formula that comes before all else, and it really dominates that. So it needs a value in there, something greater than 0. Yeah. I'm not sure what the environment is like with production units. If you all have gotten better with that, or if we're using it, you're probably just doing labor overrides and doing your own calculations. So maybe that, just as a company, maybe determine if we want to keep focusing on production units.
Right.
Are superintendents still submitting in those same sheets with production?
It varies. I haven't done an audit on it, but I'm sure it varies.
Okay.
Probably. Dennis, your group probably wants better.
They're not giving us quantities.
Most projects are relying on cost to complete, not the projection units. So to Michael and Greg's point, if you overlook the cost code when you're doing the projection, you could be sitting on a -$5,000 or -$10,000 right labor hit, and that's not being accounted for.
Okay.
All right. So I would say company-wide, I think the bigger risk is the other way.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that later. To close out my section here, I'm going to run through the updates again live. Yeah.
On your show side panel, why can't you add, like at the very top, contract value minus total cost to date, and then slip into the rest of this? Or did you do that here? Okay.
It's not showing a projected fee.
No, it doesn't show the projected fee because the projected fee takes into consideration the contract type and other options like savings splits that you may have with the owners. You know, so we're not calculating that at this point. We calculate that on the monthly project status report that goes to finance.
Why can't you show it there? I mean,
It's
you have the
possible.
projected cost
It can.
and the contract, it ought to show the projected fee.
Yeah, it can be shown.
Because that's what the whole point of doing the projection is, you're getting that.
So when you're in the full contract extra, it will be blank. So if you see this and you're on the full contract, don't be alarmed. It's just because it's just a full contract here. Okay. So that's that section there. Down here, AP transactions, and you tab over to phase detail. I just a quick reminder, these grids, they can be changed and moved around and sorted and grouped, things like that. So feel free to do any type of sorting that you like if you're trying to search for a transaction. For example, if you had all these transaction dates in here, there's this panel here, this is a filter panel, and you can click this filter icon, and you get a lot of different options on how you can sort through. Just a reminder for some people may not do this. And then you can say, you know, it's greater than, and then drop down, you should get the date, the calendar in here. Say, I want something greater than this date. But just another reporting tool that you do have. And if you don't want the filter, you just click it again and hit no filter. Same thing for AP transactions. And
So, Jeremy, I know we're not trying to talk about potential enhancements, but was there, we had briefly talked about making the user interface stick after you make
yeah, that's something that's been out for a while, to have user preferences. Yeah. So that's something that it's just been a discussion. Yeah. There hasn't been any attempt to move in that direction yet. So what we've really been trying to get this stable just for what it can do now. And if we can reach that, which I believe with this new server that we have it on, we'll reach that point pretty quickly. There may be still some calculation errors and workflow enhancements, and we'll focus on those, but I think ultimately get to a stable environment, and then we can take the next step. So the last thing I want to go over is this window here, manage existing projections. So this is your normal view. You will click, if you want to see the phase contract view, you would hit this checkbox here. And then it'll change, and you'll notice there's a new column added called extra. And that's the major difference there.
Jerry, since you're there, maybe if there's anybody that's new to the company since the training was unrolled a couple of years ago, you want to just hit high level. Jason's going to hit on it too, but the proper, we'll call it nomenclature for how to label your projection. In other words, if you're projecting, you call it June to the end of the month, and just the nuances there.
Yeah.
Because we saw just a little bit of variation, and we want to get everybody on the same page.
Right. So when you're first starting, the biggest thing is the cutoff date. And to have the most accurate information, you want your cutoff date to be correct, and you want it to be preferably at the end of the month. So if you're in September, you're doing a projection for the prior month, you need to go to your calendar in there and pick the last date so that you get all of your costs in. So I do see throughout projections when I'm handling some support issues, you know, people are picking the 10th or the 8th or the 7th, and they're wondering, well, where's my change order? I know I posted that change order. It's not reflected in my contract amount. It's not my cost. Well, we go and we run a phase detail and say, well, that cost, that change order was actually posted 2 days after the date that you picked. So just make sure you always pick the last date of the previous month
For your projection.
Right.
And you label it, if you're doing a July projection in August, you label it July 27th.
Right. You're picking a month, and you're picking year. The reason for that is for accounting purposes, so that we can say this goes in this accounting period. The date doesn't really matter for accounting. We just want to know that this is the June 2017 projection.
Okay, so it's important for the user who's doing the projection entry to understand that if the change order was on the 5th of the month, then it's not going to show up in the budget and the projection.
Right. Yeah.
Because the transaction, accounting transaction happened post period of the projection.
Correct. Yeah. So the whole point of projections is to show, as a company, how well do we forecast costs? How well do we estimate costs? It affects, everything, to meeting your revenue goals for the company, and increasing your bonding capacity, things like that. How well can we estimate costs? And by seeing true fluctuations on how the data flows by month, it gives you a better snapshot of what's happening. If you go through and you do a year of projections, and the cutoff dates are all the same, you just have a flat line. You're not seeing any of the trends. So that's why it's important. It's also important to make sure that your transactions are posted in the correct period. Now, if that contract change order was signed on the 5th of the following month, then it probably should go in the following month. But when you're using Sage, you can, date things back if you need to. So one of the problems with that was with revised contract amount. Some project managers will be maybe waiting on something to where you didn't get your schedule of values completed in time. And what's happening is you're going back and completing your schedule of values way past maybe you had another change order. And when you would do that, it would date that contract item and the amount with the date that you submitted it, instead of going all the way back to the original contract amount. So that's why sometimes you would see a cost or other things hitting earlier in your project, and later all of a sudden your contract amount skyrockets. So we changed that to where if you do an original budget adjustment or original scheduled value adjustment, it will go to the beginning of the contract. The only thing that will go after would be approved change orders, approved owner change orders. So you should see much better calculations as you go through this now. So anything else? Oh, the last thing is projection title. I feel the vision for projection title was mostly for pending projections or what if projections. If you say you wanted to have maybe an aggressive projection or have a projection that included some large change order or something, it was really meant to show how those projections were different from each other. We do notice a lot of times that people will just put the same thing for every projection title, and that's okay. Or put the month in. You don't really have to put the month in the projection title because it's already included there. So if you can, maybe be a bit more creative with your projection titles, like what was going on during that time period, during that month. You could put information like that in there.
But just to interject on that, doesn't the automatic month that like say you're entering the August projection in September, doesn't it call it September? Shouldn't that be called August?
Let's go back and look at that. So this projection period right here, if it's not what you want it to be, you can update the header, and then you can choose your month again and correct it.
Yeah, I thought even, like, let's say you were actually entering the May projection in June, I thought it would still call projection period June. No?
You should be choosing that.
You don't need to.
You can minimize that.
Okay.
Just press that. Just double arrows and stuff.
Yeah, I'm missing something here. All right, so the second, after you put your title in, you choose that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
So it's not, there was a time where it would grab the cutoff date and pull the month from that, but we added this month so that you can.
All I'm saying is I think new users, if they're doing a projection for August, and here we are setting in September, they just think of the month that they're in and they say,
right, yeah. They just got to think of your projection period.
You're projecting is all I'm trying to say. Right. Then you get screwed up when you're saving it, and it's a projection for the month. It's not even the right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just getting in the mindset. Yeah. I know you guys are working with so many dates and on what really matters, which is the job site and getting the project built. So it's we get it. Just try to remember that you're always a month behind. Okay. Well, that was everything that I wanted to show. we may have something else that do you want to show that at this time, or you're going to show it in
No,
another
I'll show
part?
it real quick before you turn it over to you.
Okay, all right.
You can show that.
Okay.
Here, no?
Yeah. Okay. So there was a time when everything was on paper. There was just reports that were run out of stage. And, back in 2011, Lemoyne had a push to start leveraging information. And that's what sparked interest in the Business Intelligence Center. So all of this information is getting captured in the database so that management can look at it and look at trends and identify how the company is going as a whole and by business units. So here I'll show you how that is being shown at the management leadership level. So this is a report that takes all of your projections, puts them all in one place so you can see it by division. So it's kind of like it's a kind of a watchdog report for how things are going. So your first section is active projects. This is allowing leadership to see the original budgeted projected profit percentage by market. And then over here in the middle, we can see the watch list projects also by market that's telling you that Commercial Central has 3 projects with a greater than 5% P-phase. So with this information, you can dive right into where the problems are and start the process of getting things corrected and back on track.
And this is still in the development phase, so we're still vetting things out, but we're just kind of showing you guys.
Open at Commercial Central.
Okay. All right. So,
Those are homes not accurate to see, all aware of that.
Right.
Right.
We're just getting this thing up and running. Everybody's getting excited to make sure their jobs aren't there, so close that tape.
Yeah. So you can click.
The point is that you could, across the board, across market.
Yeah. And this may be something, take a look, give us some feedback on it. We can incorporate some of this functionality into Fee Curve if you feel like you want to explore your projections. So what I did just there was I was able to click on the project that was on the watch list, and I'm able to see how the projected fee over time is comparing against the revised budgeted fee. A lot of projects you'll see a flat line, but you'll see that revised budgeted fee move up and down if there are owner change orders. They get pushed down. So here you can see the fluctuations, and from here you can hover over and you can get more information about it by clicking on it. And then clicking on this link, it takes you to the monthly project status report. So you were able to go back in time and just explore your previous postings. So this one just takes a second to run up here.
Just a hypothetical job. No. Which project is it? Laurel. Ever changing.
So, and instead of for this drill down, instead of showing the prior period, it just shows your current month. But the general idea is that all this information is getting used, and that you're leveraged, and that your work is important. Getting the information in there. So, and there's your monthly project status report. So.
And go to the bottom, Jeremy. Show.
Yep, and then this fee evolution is the same chart from before. So we're starting a lot of data. We're still working out a few performance enhancements to make these run a lot faster within the server. But that's the idea. Any questions?
Far right, maybe show them, Jeremy, real quick.
Oh yeah, that's an important one. All right, so just with the back button, you're back here, and then back again, we're at the main screen. So all the way to the right is overdue projections. So leadership management is going to be able to see who hasn't submitted their projections. So here we're showing right now there's currently 24 projections out there for active projects that have not been submitted on time. Yeah.
So Jeremy, is the monthly project summary report changed? Doesn't have a previous month on it anymore?
No, that's just for this view.
Just
because what we're doing, we're trying to get.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to get a snapshot of just that one period.
Right.
Yeah. The standard fee curve, yeah, good question. The standard fee curve monthly project status report is the same.
And we don't know if this number's right, we're just getting into it of where it is, so.
So here, there we go.
Now, a lot of these projects, what's gonna get tricky is, as you guys know, you get to the end of the job, you finish it, you wait on a final change order, you haven't done a projection for 45 days, work's done on the job, you're waiting for a change order to come. But this will help us better gauge across the company how we're doing.
And it may also be
Jason's gonna get into the nuances and remind everybody when the projections are due, when they're supposed to be approved.
Yeah. And for those of you that are running multiple projects, this may be a good dashboard for you as well, just to get a handle on, where you are in your own process. Yeah. Because I know sometimes just going into fee curve and typing in a job number and thinking, what are all my projects? Did I miss something?
So Jeremy, on overdue projections, we don't approve them, so if they're not approved, are they overdue, and they're showing it's overdue, or does it go back to they're not even done? I mean, where's the cutoff?
No, you're good question. Mm-hmm. We talked about it. For right now, and we can change it, we have it for approved projection.
Yes.
So that's why
the project manager.
That's correct. That's right. I'm saying don't get excited about these numbers. If Lanny's on here or Don, oh my God, there's 24 projections that haven't been. Some of them just haven't been approved.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So that's and I know we need to move on here, but that's the good thing about the projection status is that we can filter a lot of these reports by status.
Hey, Jeremy, look at that color one real quick.
Yeah.
I just want, because you're going through it quick. We looked at it. Good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just for the watch list, just so everybody can see what we're trying. Yeah, right there. So if you guys look at this too, this shows the number of projects with fee paid, and we'll talk about this at the continuous improvement meeting, I will. But we got about 5 major metrics that we're measuring. So 5% variance from the fee. Now that's not a fee paid of 5%. It's 5% of what your fee is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So looking at this, like Rudy said, he piped up, sheltered home is wrong. But the whole point of this is to show no fee paid, which is good. High level, 18, no fee paid, and we're showing a variance as it goes with the colors of where your problem child could be to the far right, just for a visual.
It'll show the fee grow.
On the left side, right?
Yeah.
We need to show the fee grow.
You will see that.
Show the good too, man.
Yeah, the good is over here. So here's 2 projects.
It's right there.
Yeah, where you see your budgeted fee and growth.
It's funny, Leslie, you say that. We had it that way, and we got over. Somebody else said no.
We don't care about seeing the good.
Yeah.
But anyway, just wanted you guys to show the things we're working on. So
this is only viewed on leadership level
for right now.
Yeah.
It's no level.
This is a great dashboard.
Yeah, that's the dashboard that I've been working on in my new role, and Jeremy and I have been working together. So it's still under development, but just so you know, you guys know, we now have the ability to look across companies, across divisions. So.
Okay. Move on. So we'll have the mints going through changes they've made.
Yeah.
What about a fee gain?
It's on the far left. It shows it.
All right, I'm Christian at Immense Networks. I'm one of the developers working with Jeremy on Fee Curve. This shouldn't really take very long. Basically, there was some question about when the application crashes or when there is any sort of issue, like, does that issue, does anybody get notified about that or anything? So what we did was integrate what's called Sentry, which is just what we use internally to track errors with our other applications, into the application, so that whenever there is any sort of what's called an unhandled exception, so basically the app crashes, it'll pop up and you'll have the ability to say what you were doing.
So in other words, guys, for me, I'm a layman. For my layman, what he's saying is when it crashes, we're having issues trying to replicate that crash.
Yeah.
We call Jeremy, he might be in a meeting, somebody's busy, 2 days later, hey man, it's crashing. All right, let's look at it. Jeremy gets in there and looks at it, there's nothing wrong. This is gonna eliminate it instantaneously.
Yeah.
It's doing also on the back end, and it's telling us the exact line of code that caused the crash, so we don't have to go back and forth with you guys to figure out what it was that you did, or we'll just be able to see it, and then we aggregate all that, and if we see that line 58 is causing crashes for over 20 people, maybe we need to look at line 52.
It's mainly useful for Jeremy, I think, or anyone working on developing the application, just to be able to know, where the error points are and things like that. But we added, just like for demo purposes, we added the test exception button, which just generates some sort of crash. But I'll show you what the actual Sentry looks like. Although I don't know.
You're probably never really going to see it.
Yeah, I think it'll mainly just be used by us and Jeremy.
I wouldn't show. I mean, it's like the little box is what they'll see.
Yeah, that's the box.
Whenever there's
very simple.
exception.
Part of this integration here also is the idea of continuous integration, where what that means is, I think sometimes we underestimate the amount of time it takes once you fix the code to get it rolled out to everyone else and tested. Sometimes there's a huge gap between, I think I fixed it, but I've got to coordinate with all these different people, Tim and whoever else, to get the code actually pushed out. What we've also done behind the scenes is set up a staging environment so that a handful of users can test to verify the error is no longer happening, and we can automatically push the working code into production, and it's all automated. Nobody has to be involved. There's no late night coordination anymore. So that's going to allow us to roll out fixes a lot faster.
That's basically like what we've been involved with right now. So
pretty simple.
I don't know if anybody has any questions or not, but
try to break it.
Just be as descriptive as possible.
Yeah, when you're filling out the report dialogue, just try to let us know what you were doing when the exception occurred, or basically what was happening.
Unusual, because
yeah.
I would hope that the program works for its intended use case. If you guys are doing alternate projections, mid-month stuff, things that are out of band of normal, we need to catch those edge cases. And so if you can say, well, look, I was trying to do something a little weird. I checked this box off to see what it did. That could help us too.
Yeah. What it's not doing is that there is a calculation error, or there's something unique going on with your budget where you have no budget or something like that, or your contract not.
Yeah, and we can actually add things like that, notifications about, like, even if there aren't crashing exceptions, just if there are like minor exceptions, we can still pipe those into Sentry so that we're notified about them as well.
It wouldn't be very hard for us to implement a submit feedback, just so if you do have some sort of issue that isn't causing it necessarily an error, you can at least get that feedback logged in the database so that we can sort of aggregate it and see if everybody's sort of asking for the same thing.
And in the meantime, continue to use the help desk ticketing system on the internet to submit tickets. There should be a separate one just for Fee Curve.
To submit feedback, I would think of it as the same thing.
Yeah, well, we have to work out how we want that to work, because he's already got a ticketing system for that. But if we can make it create those tickets from within the application, that might streamline that process.
Well, have y'all gotten a lot of feedback on the previous month's projections not showing up on the monthly progress summary report?
Here and there, just quickly answer that question. If that doesn't show up, you have an option panel at the top. What it's doing is not finding the exact date, or maybe your projection wasn't approved, or something up with the date. But you have a prior date drop down field there that you can click and pick your prior date, and then it'll show through. But do that only if it doesn't show up. You have the option to take it.
So Jeremy, just real quick, if you don't have an approved projection the prior month, it's not going to show up.
That's right.
Dennis, you hear that?
Yeah, if you don't have a part.
Yeah, if you don't have one.
No, but some folks have them and they're in there, but they're not approved. You see what I'm saying? So then it doesn't have anything to go back to. We've seen that.
Yeah, I've had that done before, even when you do intentionally select for the previous period. It seems like most of the project, once that happens, it never corrects it on subsequent projections. Not sure what the issue is.
What is this estimate for you?
Can't remember the dollar.
Hey, guys. Hey.
You looking good, Miranda?
Thank you.
A beard requirement to present today.
Christian beers.
All right, well, Jeremy's just going to get an instance of Fee Curve up for us, but I guess I just wanted to talk high level about the process and making the projections, giving you some tools and tips, I guess, to make sure projections are easy and accurate. I guess for policy-wise, depends on who you ask, but the due dates, I think a reasonable due date for projections to be entered and submitted to your VP for approval is between the 10th and the 15th of the month. That then gives the VP to the 20th to get those to senior leadership, which is when I believe they're due to senior leadership. So that's important to remember those dates. One of the first things that is critical to getting a projection entered incorrectly is when you start with the actual project announcement. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so,
you should be able to click New Lemoyne BI Center on the internet. Yeah. The one to the right.
Oh, to the right.
all right, so in the project announcement, if you get tasked with entering the announcement for the project, just remember that there is a contract type and a savings split. This link's not working for whatever reason.
Just try to see anywhere else.
And it's not that important if we can't get in it, but under project info and the project announcement, you would pick the contract type, which would be a lump sum or a GMP or GMP with savings, and this really applies to jobs that may have a cost savings. So you want to make sure you enter the correct contract type and can identify what the percentage savings is that the owner is due. So all that rolls into the calculations on the project cost summary report and in the MPSR. So if you don't have if it's 50-50 savings, it's easy, you just put in 50, but if it's an oddball like a 40-60, the amount that goes to the owner is what is entered in the owner savings split field. So we've almost got it up, but it's critical on jobs that have a savings split to make sure that gets entered. And we can take an example. So, for instance, this project has a 50-50 savings split. Well, it's saying 50, but it's actually listed as a lump sum price, so I'm not sure that that's right. So, generally, this would be a with shared savings type contract arrangement in order for there to be an actual savings passed on to the owner. But the number in this, yes.
Hey, so is 50 our savings or the owner's savings? Obviously, it doesn't matter in that scenario, but what if you're an 80 or 20?
Right, that's the owner's savings.
All owner savings, so 80 is,
yeah,
got it.
That earlier. Yeah, so if, for instance, the Gateway project has an 80-20 or a 75-15, you would put in the owner's percentage, which would be 75% or 80%. The delta there comes to us. So it's important to get that entered in correctly. A lot of the projection work, I think, happens before you get to the point where you're actually sitting down at your computer to do the data entry and fee curve. So just, to maintenance-wise, when you're managing a budget, there's a lot of things to make sure you're doing correctly. starts with getting delivery tickets and superintendents coding tickets correctly, getting those into P-Vault timely, and making sure that the PM or whoever's responsible for reviewing the invoices is actually checking the cost codes and making sure that costs are getting applied correctly across the budget. That all of that coding helps you identify cost overruns and look at where you're headed on your budget. So the big things to look at when you're trying to look at cost and identifying overruns and savings starts with your general conditions. I think if you look at just kind of big pieces, general conditions are fairly easy to identify what the trend is on those. If you have a 12-month project, you're 3 months through and you've got 3 months of trailer rental for the project hitting, it's easy to know what that cost should be over the life of the project for the next 9 months. But also putting some logic into some of those calculations, like dumpsters, for instance. If you know that you're already 50% through your cost on dumpsters and you haven't even started hanging drywall yet, then you're probably going to go over on dumpsters. So it's an art and a science when it comes to looking at things like that. But generally, taking a ratio of the project, where it's at on the schedule, how many, is it 50% through, 75% through, it's pretty easy to identify where you should be at the end of the day on general conditions costs. Labor reporting, everybody should get an email weekly, I think from Pam, that says that your labor project cost reports have gone into OCF 346. So you can go into OCF 346, you can verify what costs have hit the job for that pay period, and using that information helps you trend. If you know that you've got 50% of your concrete placed or 50% of your form work done, but your form work is 80% of your budget, then you can use that information to start trending where you're going to be on your projection. So for those folks who don't use production units and things like that, that's how you establish your cost to complete and your cost to complete column in the fee curve. So anybody interject if I'm skipping over something?
I would point out that your superintendent's salary only hits the report every other week.
Right. So yeah, any staff, project staff, superintendent and office staffs, those hit at 2-week intervals, which coincide with our pay periods. So looking at that, understanding that too. Obviously, if you had a 3-month or a 3 pay period month, and you're getting scared because your monthly pay on your charge to your staff is higher than expected, it's because of that. So definitely things to consider. Material costs. When I look at material, it's always, you have to be familiar with where you're at in the project, but using your tools, your like concrete logs, things of that nature, to understand if you're 50% through with pouring grade beams, but you're 40% through with costs, and that all your invoices have hit, then you could be trending towards some savings. So what else on material costs? Just knowing that knowing when you're expecting invoices to hit and clear helps you make sure that you get an accurate projection. Add-ons is something that I think probably gets overlooked, but once you're through entering your material and equipment projections and you come to a projection amount, I usually use the side panel, and I'll look at where I'm at on my material and equipment. I have 0 projection in this example, so then my budgeted material sales tax should be accurate. Or if I'm showing I'm saving $15,000 in material, then I should save 10% of $15,000 on sales tax. So making sure you enter in the appropriate projection on the add-ons. You can use the side panel to do that. Same thing with labor. If you know you're going to go over $100,000 on labor, then you know you're going to go over 38% or whatever your burden rate is for the project on the labor burden code. So making sure that we project that, you know, that can influence your project. If you forget to project that throughout the life of your project, you can see a major swing at the end of the job one way or the other. Same thing with bonds and insurance. You know, if you have change orders on the project, looking at where you're, you know, if you have an inflated price for bonds or insurance on your change order request, you should have some profit pockets there on those line items. Also, I guess just for me, you know, making sure that you're maintaining a clean project cost summary report, you know, before you get to the projection period. What I mean by that, I guess, is making sure that the budgeted fee is correct. Yeah, sometimes you'll go and you'll do a first budget adjustment on buyout or whatever, or if you have what I was saying, if you have a profit pocket and your different add-ons on your change request, your fee may get inflated, you know, the dollar amount. So resetting that to 5% or whatever the project fee is gives you some money to put in your contingency or buyout. So I usually do that like via a budget adjustment. Go through and make sure I've got whatever the budgeted fee is for the project. You know, if it's 5%, then you should have 5% of costs as your fee, and then anything else I put in contingency or buyout, and then that'll help you build a little cushion in. So you don't want to be very aggressive all the time on your projections, and then you end up having to write the fee down. So you want to see a nice upturn on that fee evolution that Jeremy was showing us. But making sure that you have a correct budget fee, making sure that all your commitment amounts match the budget for those lines. So if you have $100,000 in whatever PO for hollow metal doors, and your budget should reflect that. If not, then you may miss that when you're projecting. You may miss that you have an over and under in that cost code, and you may miss an opportunity to have some of that money shown in your contingency. So understanding your contingency is important. It helps you make decisions over the life of the project on where you can give and take with an owner. It may help you, influence you to make decisions that may speed up the project or what have you. So I'll put a lot of emphasis on just maintaining the project cost summary report before you get to the point where you're doing the data entry. Coordinating with the superintendent is also very important. You know, if you're looking at some superintendents, instead of coding things accurately, they may see where there's money left in a certain code, and they'll start charging labor to whatever that code may be because they don't want it to look like there's an overrun. But that doesn't do us any good for historical reporting, and it also, you may, the next month, in the next reporting period, you may look and see, well, where the hell did this $15,000 in material unloading come from? So making sure that you're talking to your superintendent and knowing where he's coding things will help you see what's left to spend on the project and help you ultimately with the projection. Transaction dates, we talked about transaction dates a little bit when Jeremy was talking. It's important to make sure you understand that the projection period that you're projecting for only reflects any transactions that occurred in that period. So if you have a change order that happened after or invoices that are dated after, it's not going to be reflected in that period. We talked a little bit about saving the projections, the title for the projection. I guess on the EFMS, I think everybody probably prints the PDF, the reports, and the PCSRs. Saving those with a good name in OCF 510. I usually set up a folder for each month so you can have multiple projections in there and date it appropriately. What else am I missing?
one thing I want to hit back on of what Jason was talking about fee evolution. Having projections for a 12-month job being flat doesn't really tell us anything. You know, well, everybody talks about sandbagging, everybody winks and nods, and everybody knows what sandbagging is. But ultimately, it doesn't help the company, and it really doesn't help the project, and it could actually adversely affect you at the end of the job. Jason mentioned it, nobody likes to see a dip at the end of the job. Nobody likes to see a hard spike either. Although you might think you're doing good, it would have been nice to know if we're closing the books 2 months earlier on a financial statement that there is monies that are there and you're 95% done with the job. Let's release, I call it releasing the first strings a little bit, and the last 75%, 75% done with the job, you got 25% left. You should have a pretty good idea how you're gonna land. Obviously, things happen. I'm not saying release everything, but you got to know your job. You got to know when you do it. And we all like to see I call it a little ski slope, right? Little view up right at the end. Not a drop, not a drastic jump. Because you can have owners where you have shared savings, where you could have an owner that gets really upset with you because he's got a bunch of money coming back, but he's making decisions at the end of the job of, I don't want these finishes. Man, it would be nice if I had these blinds, but I don't have any money. Then all of a sudden you return this bunch of money, he's not going to be happy. So it's an art and it's a science, and it's all about communication, and it's all about confidence with what you're doing. And Jason also brought up a point, which I'll take this opportunity to hit on again. We always talk about every week sitting down with your superintendent. That way there, you know where your costs are going. You know how many guys you've got on the job. You know if your labor overrun is going. Hey, we still got 10 months left in the job, and if the track rate we're going, we're going to be out of money at month 8. What are we doing? Well, my plan is I got this many guys. I'm going to phase them out. You can start looking at things like that in your projection. You can know if you got a problem. So, anybody got any questions with that? Or life history? That's the way as a company we like to report. So again, flat projections for the whole job, they're just not realistic. So.
I would say that I've been burned enough times to keep it flat, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I'm not saying through the whole thing, but I'm saying maybe 75. I know things come at the end and then you get hit. So.
Yeah, and like Leon said, if you're 75% through the project and you've still got 40% of your contingency, 40% of your contingency, for example, then you know that you're trending on the good side. Your risk is going down, and you still have more contingency than what's left in cost for the project. So you may be able to start increasing what you're projecting as fee when you start seeing that.
Right.
And like Leon said, you relationships, when you get to charging the owners nickel and diamond versus giving freebies, if you don't know where you're at on the project, you can't make a good decision on what the appropriate action is on some things. So,
but Dennis does bring up a good point, and I'm not saying get overly aggressive and overly project, the sunny side up, because we all know that there's always rainy days. So,
anybody on the phone have anything they want to contribute or something we want to touch on?
This is Greg in the Lafayette office. I kind of wanted to jump back just to the error reporting question for Jeremy. So obviously it gives you an automatic prompt to say, hey, this reports back to you guys. But for example, and going back to that question, y'all talked about the MPSR report not showing the previous month. I've adjusted the dates, the drop-down menus, gone back into the announcements, changed everything, and I'm still having issues with it. So is that just an email directly to you, Jeremy, or to get this resolved for an MPSR report?
You should be submitting a help desk ticket through Lemoyne Intranet for that.
Help desk ticket through Lemoyne Intranet, okay?
Greg, it's a BI Center. When I sent that email blast out, I think I had a PDF in there.
It's BI Center related.
Yeah, it's, see if I can yank it up real quick. So you see TLC Help Desk is BIC support. This is where you were to add, you add a, click on trouble ticket and add new item, and you go in and submit it this way. Okay. That's for the BI Center related help desk work. What we were talking about earlier, which I think is a good idea, may have to think through figuring it out, is not from a help desk ticket standpoint, but suggestions. You know, this is what here's some feedback and suggestions to fix this or that.
Yeah, instead of kind of forcing them to the other portal, it'd be nice if it was within the application.
Right.
You know?
Well, Rudy, I reinforced, we sent that out a couple weeks ago, you did, and we made sure behind the scenes, it's going not only to Jeremy, but to Immense and, well, it's ultimately going to Tim.
Right. So we're in the process, so Jeremy's going to continue to handle all reporting issues related to Fee Curve. And then the Immense, it's a new group we've been working with. The person you've been talking, you can't see him, is Darren with Immense. So they're handling maybe more on the app side, on the code side, with potentially making improvements to the code, et cetera. So it's kind of a collaborative effort right now to make the software as effective as it can be. Understanding that, you know, we are looking at some new ERPs and things that have cost projection, you know, built into those ERP systems. So we're trying to be as effective and efficient as we can with Fee Curve right now.
Behind the scenes, if Greg submits that ticket, it'll get to Jeremy.
Absolutely.
That's what I want to do.
Yeah. So use not just the traditional IT help desk ticket over here, the create a help desk ticket, go to the BIC support. That's where you should submit all Fee Curve or BI Center related issues. Now the bug tracker is going to track it in the moment. So like if you have an exception pop while you're doing a cost projection, it's going to, that deal that Christian showed us earlier will come up on the screen, and it's going to ask you for more description to what you were doing.
But Greg's issue is a perfect example of where he would submit it here.
Exactly.
That's right where it needs to go.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other questions from either folks here or on the phone?
Hey, this is Robert Wingard. This kind of goes back to what Greg was saying. On the monthly report, something I wasn't aware of that Don brought to my attention was that on something like the high school where we had to go to contract and start billing off of incomplete, or maybe like 50% drawings, we had to go build schedule of values based on what the budget was at that time. Say for like, you know, Division 2 could have been $2 million, Division 6 could have been $15 million, whatever. We had to start billing it, and as we started getting subs on board, we had to go in there and adjust the schedule of values. But when you go create a new line item in the schedule of values, it defaults to whatever date that you actually go enter that schedule of values in there. So he said important, it'll mess up the reporting in on Fee Curve is you got to make sure that the date for whatever the new schedule of values is the same date as the original entry, because it'll mess up all the reporting.
That's in the contracts module, Robert?
Yep. Learned that the hard way.
A lot of lessons we learned the hard way, unfortunately. Good point. Anyone else have things like that to share or questions? I think we're good. I think this was a good session. I appreciate Jeremy, Darren, Colin, Christian, you guys, and Jason for doing this. You all did a good job. Thank you, Jeremy. Have a good day.
Thank y'all.